In today's episode, I'm checking out the bread and butter of Microsoft 365. Yes, it's Microsoft Exchange mailboxes. We're going to talk about exactly what they are, why are they so important to Microsoft 365, and most importantly, how can you manage them easily? So make sure that you stay tuned right to the end, because this session is packed with tips and tricks you're not going to want to miss. Check it out. If your Microsoft settings change, your configs get deleted, or if you have unchecked users lurking in your tenant, you're asking for trouble. CoreView catches and fixes these issues before they disrupt your business. Visit coreview.com to learn more. Well, as Obi-Wan once said, hello there. Welcome to this week's session. I'm Andy Malone, Microsoft MVP, and if this is your first time, I really do appreciate you dropping by. On today's episode, I thought I'd discuss, as I said in the intro, the bread and butter of Microsoft 365. Exchange mailboxes are such an important component of Microsoft 365, and understanding Exchange Online is absolutely critical if you want to move forward with your career as an administrator. So in this session, we're going to really kind of focus in on the different types of mailboxes. We're going to talk about Exchange Online mailboxes, we'll talk about contacts and how they work, and we're also going to talk about things like distribution lists and some of those really kind of critical items. I'll show you how you can manage them, and I'll show you how you can troubleshoot them as well. Now, if you've got questions and comments, as always, get those down below. I really love those. And if you've not subscribed to the channel, please bump the subscribe button and come and join my learning community. And if you enjoy the session, give me a big thumbs up. It does make a difference to the channel. Okay, so I think without any further jibber jabber, I think we'll jump in and take a look at Exchange mailboxes. Okay, so I'm kicking off here in the Microsoft 365 Admin Center. Now, to manage your Microsoft Exchange mailboxes, you can actually do a number of things. So I can come up here into my users pane here. If I go into my active users, and as you can see, I have a user here called Adele. And if I go into Adele's account, you can see one of the tabs that we have is Mail. So here you can manage a number of those email properties, and that really does save quite a lot of time. That's one way to kind of manage email. Another way to manage it is by going into the Exchange Admin Center. So the Exchange Admin Center can be found here in Microsoft 365, or you can jump to it directly by either going admin.exchange.microsoft.com, and this will take you straight in here. So let's have a look at the Admin Center here. Now, again, I've done videos on Exchange in the past, but of course now with the likes of Exchange Server coming out as Exchange Server SE or Subscription Edition, that means essentially Microsoft are really starting to move everybody into the cloud. And the idea of the on-premises Exchange Server is really kind of becoming far in between, I think. So what I want to do is I'm going to come down into the recipients. So what we're looking for here is those mailboxes. And mailboxes are super important because essentially with recipients, there are two types of mailboxes. So we have user mailboxes, so obviously for each user, and we also have group mailboxes. So whenever you create a Microsoft 365 group or a Microsoft team, that is the mailbox that's within Microsoft Exchange. Coming into the mailboxes here, you can see that we have a number of mailboxes already created. And we can go into a specific mailbox, which we'll do. So again, I'm going to go into Adele's mailbox here, and you can see you've got a number of options. So do you want to hide the mailbox? Now, what does that mean? That means hide it from the address list. So when you go in and you click on, you're creating an email and you click on to, this would hide the user from that address list. Sometimes, for example, if your name's Satya Nadella or Bill Gates and you don't want to be found by the rest of the team, you might want to do that. Email forwarding. So for this particular inbox, Adele might have gone on vacation. And when she's on vacation, you might want to set up forwarding to go to perhaps a colleague. So I can say, who do I want to forward this to? And you have a number of options here. So forward to an internal mail address, and I can just select the person that I want to speak with, or you can click on forward to an external email address here. And what this does is obviously, let's say, for example, Adele's left the company or she's on, temporary leave or something like that. You might want to forward that. Again, it says here, deliver messages to both forwarding email addresses and the mailbox. So again, you've got the best of both worlds there. So either way, you have the option there for email forwarding. You can also do something called send on behalf of. So send on behalf of is, let's say, James Bond and Miss Moneypenny. So Miss Moneypenny will be sending on behalf of James Bond. Yes, and the email would come through as on behalf of James Bond, as opposed to sending as James Bond. So you can see you've got the contact information, and this is essentially coming from Enter ID here. And we can manage that contact information. You can either do it through the Microsoft 365 account, or you can do it here from Microsoft Exchange, of course. Again, hiding from the global address list. So again, that's pretty much the same as this option here. So that just means that the global address list won't be able to find this particular email address for maybe privacy reasons. You can also manage other email addresses here as well. So we have a number of different types of email addresses. So SharePoint Online, for example, you can see that this is, it doesn't really tell you very much, but there we go. This is kind of the ID of this particular mailbox. Most mail addresses use something called a UPN, or user principal name. And the user principal name means a name the user at mycompany.com. So you can see here I'm not using any kind of custom domain name, but you can. Now you're probably wondering what these three options are. So SharePoint Online, because of course Microsoft 365 integrates with both SharePoint and also Exchange Online. SIP. So this is the Session Initiation Protocol. So this is used for voice calling. So if you've got integration into the likes of Microsoft Teams, this is very useful for that. SMTP, Simple Mail Transfer Protocol, or your UPN, your user principal name. That's where you'll get that. So that's your email addresses. And then you've got your email apps and mobile devices here. So you can manage those email app settings. This is interesting for security reasons. These are very what we call old protocols. So things like POP3, this is the post office protocol, IMAP. These are quite, I would definitely switch some of these off. They're very, very old. And these, of course, these old protocols don't support the likes of multi-factor authentication. So again, you might want to switch off, some of these kind of very, very old protocols there. Okay, down here it shows me my mailbox usage. This particular tenant has a 100 gig mailbox and per user, and you can see how much you've used. Again, you can also, if you click on this link as well, this will take you to a learn.microsoft.com article here. Manage mobile devices. So if you're managing mobile devices, to be honest, this is more of the Exchange Active Sync mobile devices. And if you had, let's say, Exchange on a corporate network. For managing mobile devices, though, you probably would want to use Intune, which, again, I've done things with that in the past. So coming over to the Organization tab here, I can manage the organization information. So again, you can put some details in here. You'll notice that this user has a manager. So the manager is a very useful attribute in Microsoft 365 because what this does is, let's say your manager, you leave the company, it allows your manager to gain access to the mailbox for up to 30 days. So that can be quite useful. Delegation, again, you've got three options with delegation. So I can delegate somebody with send as permissions. And as I mentioned earlier, earlier, let's say this is Adele's assistant. So I can say, yeah, I want to assign a delegation to this particular mailbox, so I can select this particular user, or indeed add somebody else in. So send as. So the send as is you're actually sending as that person. So in other words, if Miss Moneypenny has access to James Bond's account, then the email will go as James Bond. Send on behalf of, mentioned that one already, and read and manage and full access. So read and manage, if you want to grant somebody else access to this mailbox, again, it might be a personal assistant. I can then select, let's say, for example, Alex here, and I would like Alex to have access. So I'm going to grant him delegated permissions. So again, am I sure I want to do that? So I'm going to say, yes, I am. And you can see that that's now been added. So Alex has now got full access to this particular mailbox. Now be careful with that. Obviously, for security purposes, you want to handle that kind of carefully. For details on the mailbox itself, this is quite useful. So mail flow settings and delivery restriction settings. Now it's interesting to note, by the way, that when you click onto these, they have a default limit of 35 megs. So that means send and receive, size limit 35 megabytes. However, you can increase that to 150 megabytes per user. Okay, so again, if you want to do that, you can do that. That's quite easy, 150 megabytes. So message size restrictions, and again, the same for message delivery restrictions as well. In terms of delivery restrictions, do you want to accept messages from anybody or selected senders, or require the senders to be authenticated as well? So this is quite useful. Let's say, for example, you were in a school or in some kind of situation where you're monitoring users' mailboxes. Again, if you're in a school, you might want the kids only to be able to send email to certain teachers or to certain classmates. So that could be quite useful for that. Block messages. So again, do you want to block messages from any individuals or groups? Again, that could also be quite useful. Okay, so that's the delivery restrictions then. So moving on, just scrolling down here, we have then something called the mailbox policy and the sharing policy. That's basically the default sharing policy there that I showed you a few moments ago. The retention policy, however, I can come into the retention policy here, and you can see that you can't really change these. You can actually change some of them through PowerShell. But things like the role assignment is just a user. The retention policy, you can actually create your own retention tags. And this is done in the compliance portal, by the way. So, for example, you can create your own retention policies. I'm just going to use the default mailbox retention policy. Address book policy, again, I'm just using a standard address book here. So we're only a small company. I don't need to make any different changes there. Okay, so role assignment, address book policy here. And the next thing then is we go to the others. So others, we have things like custom attributes. So if you wanted to add custom attributes, you can create your own. So you might want to call something a department or a vehicle type or something. So you can actually add in up to 15 different custom attributes, and this can be quite useful for filtering, of course. If the user is a member of a particular group, that's where you can complete that. And again, you can also here, you can do this in Outlook Online, but this is where you can also configure automatic replies for this mailbox. So for example, you can send automatic replies during the work period or something like that. And you can customize all of these. That's quite useful, and you can put kind of auto reply messages. So this is really quite nice, actually. Users can do that, by the way, in the Outlook Anywhere, so in their mailbox. In fact, I'll show you. If I just go back in here, and if I come, let's say, go into Outlook, Then to manage this, if you come up here into view, you can also see that you've got messages, but you've got this option here that says settings. So if I go into the settings here, these are all the individual options or the individual settings that you can do. For example, you can set your own retention policies here. You can set your own collection rules and things like that. So definitely from a user's perspective, take a look at those. They're really useful. So automatic replies. Mailbox archive. So archiving is very useful. You can enable the archiving for this mailbox, and you can just call it, anything that you want to. I'm just going to call it archive here. So I can click on save, and essentially you will get, rather than having what we call a personal store in your email, we'll create what we call an archive. And it's quite useful for, if your mailbox is getting too big, you can move content to that. Now, very importantly is this feature, converting a mailbox to a shared mailbox. And what this does is it does exactly as it says on the tin. So for example, let's say that Adele is a salesperson. I can convert this to a shared mailbox, and I can do that. And what that means is anybody who's in her sales group or sales team will actually get automatic access to that. And this is quite useful if Adele leaves the company. So you can see here that, again, just close this down and you'll just refresh this page. So if I go back into Adele's account now, back into her mailbox, you can see now it says convert back to a regular mailbox. Now, very importantly that you should know about this, if you do convert it a shared mailbox, you can't delete the account. So if you delete the account, it untethers the shared mailbox. Now, if you go and create a shared mailbox, for example, in just a regular shared mailbox, it doesn't, because it has nothing to untether from. But if you convert a regular mailbox into a shared mailbox, it can cause problems. So just be aware of that. But as you can see, I can convert it right back again if I want to. So Adele comes back from her vacation and we want to convert it back. So again, I can easily do that for her. Okay, so I'm just going to convert this back to a regular mailbox from a shared mailbox, and again I can just confirm that there. So there we go. I've now converted that back again. So it's a pretty flexible thing. You can also do that, of course, via command line, via PowerShell as well. Okay, other things that we've got here, which are very useful, of course, you've got the mail tips. If you want to do little mail tips, you can do that. Is the mailbox a member of a group? So you can do that. Recover deleted items. At the moment, I've not used this mailbox, so that's why there's nothing in there at the moment. Litigation hold is quite useful. So if Adele leaves the company and for some reason you need to retain Adele's mailbox, or you want to assign it to another member of staff, what you can do is you can place this mailbox on hold. Everything flows normally. The only difference is recycle bins are not emptied. It could be used in a digital investigation, but again, likewise, it could also be used just to retain the data if you don't want to lose it. You can also set recipient limits here as well. So again, by default, it defaults to 500 recipients if I'm sending out an email. Now, Microsoft do have a service where you can extend that, but you need to basically switch that on through PowerShell, and also you need to put in a service request for that as well. So there we have it. That, ladies and gentlemen, is your basic mailbox. So the other types of mailboxes that we have is we have group mailboxes. So group mailboxes, essentially, as you can see, these are Microsoft 365 groups. And really, it's really to do with the amount of collaboration that we can have in Microsoft 365. So a mail-enabled security group is just exactly that. It's a security group that just happens to have its mail enabled. A dynamic distribution list. So a dynamic distribution list, you can add a group. So anybody who becomes a member of the group automatically joins that distribution list. A regular distribution list, which is just essentially a contact list. And you've got Microsoft 365 groups, okay, which I've covered previously. The difference between a Microsoft 365 group is it's a fully collaborative experience. So if I go back into that email here, and if I go into groups, you can see that I've got a number of groups here. So for example, my retail group, you get that shared mailbox, you get a shared document library here, just like OneDrive for Business, except it's for the group. You get an events calendar, you get a list of members, and you also get a SharePoint team site. You get a OneNote page. So it's very, very collaborative. You understand? In comparison, however, you can do the group here as well in Microsoft 365 group. You can also convert this to become a Microsoft team as well. So for example, I've got a group here, a Microsoft 365 group, and as you can see, it's exactly the same in 365 as it would look like in Exchange. I can also, you can see, I can manage the Teams components here in Microsoft Teams. By the way, the difference is that if you add on the Teams, you get all the video calling, and you can also get access to third-party apps as well. A resource mailbox. Resource mailboxes are fantastic. So if you've got things like a conference room here, for example, and you want people to be able to book the conference room, this is great. I did a recent video on this, so make sure that you check that out. That's quite interesting if you're looking for details on how to do resource mailboxes. And the final type of, I suppose, person that you might want to communicate with is a contact, and these are just externals, and again they will just go in your contact or your address book. Okay, so there you have it, a deep dive just in what we call mailboxes. So looking at the online mailbox experience in Microsoft 365. I hope you found that useful. So there you have it. I hope you're a little bit wiser when it comes to Exchange Online mailboxes now, what they are, how they work, and most importantly, what they can do for you. Hey, listen, I really appreciate you joining me this week. And again, got any questions, get those down below. I really do appreciate it. And if you've not subscribed to the channel, bump that subscribe button and come and join us. Just a quick reminder as well, if you'd like more, why not consider signing up to my Patreon page? Here you'll get access to full Microsoft courses, monthly Zoom calls, and much more. Okay, that's it for this week. Thanks so much for joining me. I'll see you around. Take care.